Are you super stressed about your AP US History exam? Not sure what the first step to take is when tackling your FRQs? Then you're going to want to watch this video because in it, we're going to give you a 5-step strategy that you can start using to write effective AP US History FRQs. We've helped millions of students score 4s and 5s on their AP exams. Be sure to watch until the end of this video because we're going to give you 3 additional resources that you can use to start jumpstarting your AP US History exam prep. Are you ready? Let's get started. The first step when it comes to tackling the AP US History FRQs is to master the SAQ, DBQ, and LEQ rubrics. Students make the mistake of not knowing how they're going to be graded on their exams, so they head into test day not understanding how they're going to earn points. As you can see on the screen here, what we've done is we've gone ahead and pulled up the SAQ scoring guidelines for the 2019 exam for question number 1. You can see here that the question is worth 3 points. And so knowing exactly what is going to give you each of these 3 points is clearly vital for your AP US History exam. For example, in this instance, for students to have scored points in terms of showing the differences between the 2 sources and historical interpretations, students had to mention both sources in their response. As you start to familiarize yourself with the differences between the rubrics, you'll start to notice common directive words that the College Board uses, but we'll go more into that later. For now, just look at the last 2 to 3 years worth of free response questions for the short answer questions, document-based questions, and then the long essay questions. Now let's head into step number 2. The second step when it comes to writing effective AP US History FRQs is to make sure that you circle or underline any keyword in the question itself. You will often be asked to do things such as describing and explaining when it comes to the SAQ section, as you can see here on the screen with the 2019 exam. Students will often be asked to do so in response to a particular stimuli that the College Board has given them. When it comes to the DBQs and the LEQs, you're going to be asked 3 different types of questions. Those are to compare, to evaluate change in continuity over time, and to explore causation. These types of questions are often phrased with the directive words of evaluate the extent of. It's easy to circle and underline these words so that you better understand exactly what the test maker is asking you. Let's talk about what describe and explain means in the context of short answer questions. When the exam asks you to describe something, this is where you just have to answer the question head on. There is no need to show the why or provide more than describing the characteristics of the topic or concept that's being tested. When you're asked to explain something, this is where you'll have to show the why. You'll typically need to give 3 to 5 sentences here as well as an example in order to earn points. After you've identified the key directive words of what's being asked of you, be sure to just address that and then move on. Sometimes students fall into the trap of giving everything that they know towards something when they actually were just asked to describe something and they should have moved on a long time ago. This is valuable test-taking time for your apush exam that you cannot make the mistake of losing. So how do you avoid this problem? One of the easiest test-taking tips we can give you is to leave a star or a tick mark next to each directive word as you respond to the question. This will serve as a check system for you to make sure that you've answered every part of the question and that you're moving and pacing properly throughout the exam. Aside from describing and explaining, there are 4 other commonly used directive words on the apush exam. They include to compare, evaluate, identify, and support an argument. If you're asked to compare something, this is where you're going to want to talk about similarities and or differences. If you're asked to evaluate something, this is where you're going to want to determine the importance of something or the quality or accuracy of the claim that's being made. If you're being asked to identify something, this is where you're just going to give information about what you know on the specific topic without elaboration or explanation. It's very similar to describe. And then when you're asked to support an argument, this is where you're going to want to give specific examples and explain how they support a thesis. So that's it for 2 steps. Before we head into step number 3, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel so that you can get more helpful tips for AP US History, because in our follow-on video, we're going to go over a ton of apush FRQ writing tips that you're going to want to check out and use for your exam. The third step when it comes to writing effective AP US History FRQs is to make sure that you plan out your response before you start writing. The College Board gives this advice to students every single year, and only some students take it. Students rush into giving a response because they're stressed on test day that they don't actually take a second to plan out what they're going to write. As a result, their arguments aren't as coherent as they could be. So, how do you plan out your response? Well, what we recommend is to first read the question and understand the directive word that's being asked of you. Then reread the question and try to word the question in your own words. This will help you with your comprehension of the question being asked of you. After you've understood the question, start to craft your thesis statement. The easiest way to do so is either by using the although A, XYZ, therefore Y formula, or to make sure that you make a statement that also has the because or therefore word incorporated with an argument following it. The easiest way to ask yourself whether or not your thesis is defensible is whether or not it can be agreed or disagreed with. Finally, bring in your supporting evidence to support your thesis. Make sure you have enough supporting evidence to support your thesis and earn the different points that are allocated in the rubric. By following this three-step process of identifying the question and what it's asking you, crafting a thesis, and then bringing in your supporting evidence, you will have a very clear strategy when it comes to test day on AP US History. This will allow you to craft your response and plan for it before you put your pencil down and formally start writing your response. Ultimately, what this will show in your response is a more coherent response that helps connect the dots of what the prompt is asking you and what you learned in class, which is ultimately the key of what the College Board is assessing you on when it comes to the AP US History free response section. All right, so that's 3 tips. Let's go ahead and jump into step number 4. The 4th step is to remember that DBQs and LEQs are aimed to assess you on 4 respective skills: the formation of a thesis, contextualization, sourcing, and then complexity. And then when it comes to the SAQs, you do not need to write a full-on essay response, you simply need to respond to the question that's being asked of you. So what does this mean? Well, for the SAQ, this means that you can ignore having an introduction, conclusion, or a thesis in your response. And then for the DBQ and SAQ, it means that there is a clear 7 and 6-point respective rubric that you can follow to do well on the exam. For the DBQ, here are the components that you're going to need. The first one is a clear, defensible thesis that has a clear line of reasoning. It needs to address the prompt and have this clear line of reasoning. It cannot just address the prompt but not have a stance. The second component is to make sure that you've contextualized your response in the broader lens of history. What happened in the 50 to 100 years prior to the time period that's being asked of you? From here, you're going to want to make sure that you're supporting your claim or thesis with accurate and historically relevant evidence. 1 point here is given for using at least 3 documents. The second point is earned when you use at least 6 documents and tie it back to your thesis to advance your argument. And another point is earned by bringing in relevant historical evidence that you know from beyond the resources of what's being given to you in the documents. For analysis, students need to source from at least 3 documents and discuss things such as author's point of view, purpose, audience, or historical situation. The second part of analysis is to also make sure that you understand and can bring in complexity into your response. This is bringing in connections to broader periods of history and also through demonstrating specific nuances to the historical reasoning skills that you're being assessed on. For the LEQ, much of the rubric is the same except for the point on citing additional outside evidence, since that's obviously the entire point of a long essay question. That being said, as you can see from these 2 rubrics, in order to do well, you need to demonstrate those key historical skills such as forming a defensible thesis, introducing complexity, having contextualization, as well as understanding the sourcing of documents. As you work your way through this mental checklist of whether or not you've demonstrated these skills, remember to close the loop. The College Board refers to this as always being able to show the why in your response, and this is typically cued in with words such as because or therefore. If you've done an adequate job of using your evidence and using it to advance your argument, you will notice that you are consistently closing the loop. So keep that in mind and make sure that you are showing the why to your reader. That leads us to our 5th and final tip when it comes to writing effective AP US History FRQs, which is to practice, and then practice some more. It's one thing to understand what the rubrics are, it's another thing to actually be able to write effective responses that meet these rubric requirements. So make sure that you've spent your time learning the rubrics, then practicing your responses. We recommend pairing up with a friend and having a study buddy so that you can write your responses, grade each other's work, and then see how another student interpreted the question that you answered. This will help you build your familiarity with the rubric while also making sure that you get the adequate practice that you need to excel on your AP exam. All right, so 3 additional resources to help you out as we promised at the beginning of this video. The first one is the College Board's AP Central for past released exams, scoring guidelines, as well as chief reader reports. You'll want to check this out so that you can see sample responses of how other students answered particular questions, and also to get the actual closest thing to the real exam, since they are going to be past released exams. The second resource is Albert's AP US History Review Guide. This is a free review guide on our blog that you can access to pace yourself in your studying and make sure that you're making the most of your limited study time. And the final resource is Albert's AP US History Review course. This has hundreds of practice questions as well as detailed explanations and full-length practice exams and original full FRQs to help you give you additional practice in addition to AP Central in case you exhaust those resources. Lastly, if you found this video helpful, leave a comment for us below as to what you found most helpful, and then be sure to like and subscribe to our channel because in our follow-on video, we're going to go over a ton of FRQ tips that you can use in your AP US History exam specific to the SAQ, DBQ, as well as LEQ. That's it for this time though. We'll see you next time.